down. Sorry.
So, hello again, my dear viewers, and welcome to part 8 of our study of the book of Revelation. And we continue then with the time periods. What does especially Revelation mean, for instance, when it says 3.5 years? The rest of the Bible gives the answer, and even Jesus himself. The 3 days of Jesus. Jesus said, I do cures today and tomorrow, on the 3rd day I shall be perfected. That's from the Gospel of Luke.
Okay. And that's very important because it's the first time that we've actually heard Jesus' words.
Yes, exactly.
And
yes.
that's why I wanted to start this session, Neil, with the words of Jesus.
With the words of Jesus.
Lovely.
Okay. So the Gospel of Luke gives a long account of Jesus' mission after Jesus. That is, after he said these words, I will be glorified today and tomorrow on the 3rd day. So Jesus could only have been talking about years. He would be perfected the 3rd year after the resurrection. So he said, I do cures today and tomorrow, on the 3rd day I will be glorified. It makes no sense whatsoever if it's here actually referring to days. It only makes sense if a day stands for a year. 10 days tribulation. That's the next aspect then of a day for a year. You shall have tribulation for 10 days. This is in Revelation chapter 2 verse 10. Now Monsignor Philip Hughes wrote a book entitled A History of the Church to the Eve of the Reformation. It was published in 1976 by Sheed and Ward of London. In the book, Monsignor Hughes wrote, the 10 years persecution, which was initiated in 303 by the Roman Emperor Diocletian, was the greatest of all persecutions. So unquestionably, when they were told you will have tribulation 10 days, it certainly means 10 years. Now the conclusion, from start to finish of God's word, the Bible, a day stands for a year in the prophecies. It is the same in the book of Revelation.
Thank you.
There are exceptions in the book of Revelation. For instance, peace or silence in heaven for half an hour, and also the dead bodies shall line the street of the great city for 3.5 days. The full period was in fact 105 years, so it's using days of the moon.
Right.
Because God created the sun and the moon has a part too in the timing of the year. A day of the moon is 30 days actually. So why does it change? It seems it changes because the occasion demands it. If we, for instance, think of silence in heaven for 15 days, which it actually was, our mind would think people sitting around for 15 days doing nothing, and that's the way the mind reacts in the first instance. And then you can't have dead bodies in the street for 105 days.
No.
So this God, to cater for our mental response, he uses a different symbol.
Which God's quite entitled to do.
Which is entitled to do, God, the sun and the moon. But it took brilliant work, for instance, to work out that this is what he meant, days of the moon rather than days of the sun. But by and large, it is ordinary days, 3.5 years, and of course it actually comes to 1260 years in fact, and that is of course a very important period, covering well over half the whole period since Revelation was given.
Thank you, Neil. Your explanations are really, really grounded and very, very easy to understand. You're making it very straightforward, very easy. There is a tremendous amount of knowledge to take in, but because we're doing it in short sessions, you're making it so easy for us. And because it's written up like that, people can go over it and over it and over it.
Well, I hope I'm making it easy because I'm basing it in fact.
Exactly.
That's the only thing, and in fact,
Yeah.
I think the facts. If we let the facts speak for themselves, they do.
Yeah.
But if we try and impose our own opinions, then of course we're in serious trouble.
Yeah.
Now we will now deal with the whole question of symbolic and literal.
Yes.
Because the ordinary speech that we use every day is literal speech.
Okay.
However, we also use a lot of symbolic words without even knowing it.
Okay.
And I hopefully give an example. But it's very important to distinguish when a word is meant to be symbolic or when it's meant to be literal, because the two have no actual connection.
Right.
And they mean something completely different. So it's important to look, because as I said, the book of Revelation is part of the whole Bible, and John was very much a Jew who was very familiar with the writings of the entire Old Testament, of course, and he too would have thought and written like a Jew with a Jewish mind. So we'll just take a look at some of the words that are often used in the prophecies in a symbolic sense.
Okay.
Now, literal or figurative, literal words are words that are used with their normal meaning.
Okay.
Figurative words are words which do not have their normal meaning. And literal or symbolic, symbolic words are also words which do not have their normal meaning. The exact meaning of figurative and symbolic, you could roughly say that they mean roughly the same thing.
Oh,
those
okay.
two
I
words.
didn't know that.
The
Thanks.
two words can vary according to their use. The best thing to do is to study the words as they're used in any piece of writing, not just in the Bible. Figurative and symbolic words are widely used in general writing and in speech. They add colour to language. The poets, of course, have always used a lot of symbolic words. Example of symbolic language is the side door leads to the office. This is a literal plain statement. But a university degree opens the door to many good jobs. This is a symbolic use because there's no actual door in question. The meaning of door in both cases is completely different. And Bible prophecy makes great use of symbolic words. The symbols add a richness and depth to the subject. Many of the prophecies use the same symbols with the same meaning naturally, and the Bible itself explains the meaning of many of the symbols. This is the good thing about it. It actually doesn't leave it up to us, it explains them.
Wow.
So some of the symbols then used in the prophecies: heaven and earth. Heaven means the governments of the world, and earth means the common people. Heaven is the rulers, and earth the ruled. Now, to actually make a statement like this, we need a lot more evidence. And when we come to chapter 4, a throne open in heaven, we will see that a lot more evidence, because that's not enough evidence in itself to just say, oh yes, that the governments of the world are heaven and the people are there. There is a lot more evidence than that, but as I say, we'll give it in chapter 4. Now, the sun, moon and stars are used by a whole variety of prophets, and it's very important to, because of course we look up at the sky and we see the sun, we look up at night and we see the moon, and we see the stars. There are that on the one hand, but is that what is really meant by the prophets? We have to see. Sun, moon and stars. Joseph was a dreamer, and he was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. So Joseph was, you could say, one of the great patriarchs: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph.
Yeah.
He was the father of 12 tribes.
He was a patriarch, you're right.
He was, and his name, the name Israel, comes from Joseph. From Jacob, I mean, not from...
no, Jacob.
Jacob was the father of Joseph, but the thing is, Jacob is the interpreter of this, in fact, so he is the key to it. Joseph was Jacob's son, and he was a dreamer, and he was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. Joseph said, "Look, I have dreamed another dream. The sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me." And his father interpreted it, but did his father actually say, "Oh, you meant to say the sun up there is going to bow down to you, Joseph, and the moon is, how could that happen?" But look at the interpretation he gave it. And this is a good guide in, because after all, the Jews, of course, placed huge emphasis on what they call the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible.
Yeah.
So all Jews from succeeding generations would be heavily influenced by this interpretation.
Yes.
That Jacob gave.
Gosh.
So his father Jacob interpreted the dream, and he said, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" So you see, the interpretation he gave has nothing at all to do with the sun and the moon and the sky or the stars. And this is really a pattern of the whole Bible. The sun stood for Jacob himself, the moon stood for Rachel, who was Joseph's mother, and the 11 stars stood for the 11 brothers of Joseph. Jacob, as the husband, was the most important member of the family. Rachel, as the wife, was the second most important, and the 11 sons were the third most important item. This is a prophecy of the kingdom, when the whole world will bow down to Christ. But Joseph stands for Christ in this case. So the sun, moon and the 11 stars stand not just for the kingdom, but for the history that would lead to the kingdom. They are used sometimes by the prophets to foretell events that are long past. There are also some that are still future. The sun is the brightest star in the sky. We must actually start with the actual literal sun and the moon. And the sun is the brightest star. And the moon depends on the reflection of the sun for its light.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the moon does not give light.
Okay.
It's only the reflection of the sun.
Okay.
So this is the brightest star in the sky. The prophets use sun, moon, stars to foretell world events. The sun stands for the strongest country in the world at any time that is being predicted. The Bible doesn't specifically say this, but it's a reasonable conclusion when it's foretelling world history. That because you especially in the Old Testament, you always had one powerful empire usually which dominated that part of the world, and that would be the sun at the time, being predicted by the prophet. The moon, the sun represents the politics. After the politics, the next most important, well, the religion is the most important, but in the everyday affairs of man, the next most important thing in the country is its religion, and that is what the moon stands for, because the religion, especially in ancient times, for instance, the pagan Roman religion depended hugely on the Roman government. In other words, the politics of the religion were far more intertwined than they are now, and a lot of the emperors were actually, they had the title of Pontifex Maximus, which was Supreme Pontiff, but that's a religious title.
It is, yeah.
You see, so
is that used today?
That's used by the Pope today, yes.
Good question, Patrick.
Yes, indeed it is, and you wonder why. So that is what the moon stands for. The stars stands for the leading figures in the country. The word celebrity could be used for them. Today we have sports stars, film stars, pop stars. A prophecy which uses sun, moon and stars is a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. This refers to the Roman Empire at the time of Constantine. The woman was the Christian Church, the sun was the Roman Empire, the moon was the pagan religion of the Roman Empire, and the 12 stars were 12 emperors who had reigned up to the giving of the book of Revelation. So it makes absolutely no sense at all if we try and apply that to a literal sun or literal moon.
No.
But amazingly, there were actually exactly 12 emperors, and they were the leading princes of the realm up to the time that John wrote the book of Revelation in the era of the Emperor Domitian. And of course the first emperor was Caesar Augustus, who actually was the emperor that sent out, made the census when Jesus was born.
Okay.
So Jesus foretold, he said, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven. This refers to the time around the second coming, our own day. In other words, the sun here is America. The great United States of America is the sun of our day, because by its own definition it's the only superpower. Without question, it's the most influential country in the world. That's I don't want to say any more than that, but that's a fact that no one can dispute.
No.
It will lose its influence. Of course, it will certainly lose it when Christ comes, but coming events cast their shadows, and some magazines were using that very language after the pullout from Afghanistan, that America's influence the world is very much on the decline. But it will be still influential up to the second coming, but after that it will just become one country among many with no influence whatsoever beyond the Mexican border. The moon refers to religion, the religions of the world. They will not give their light. They will not be able to give much true guidance, since unfortunately so many of their teachings will be shown to be false. A lot of them have good in them, I would say that, and a lot of them have good principles, I wouldn't deny that.
No.
But their actual teaching, especially about the next world, unfortunately is not true.
No.
So they will be shown to be false by Christ. The stars will fall from heaven. The celebrities will lose their prominence. The political celebrities will come crashing down from their high positions. Could Christ mean that the actual sun in the sky will get dark? That happens practically every cloudy day, especially in the winter time. It means nothing really. The sun is darkened many times for days. It cannot be what he meant.
No.
It means no. It means the actual. The sun is the major political power in his day. Of course, it was the Roman Empire, and before that it was the Greek Empire. Now, mountain, hill, valley, island. Mountain is a kingdom. A mountain is a high, towering high above the land around, and even above the hills. A kingdom. I am against you, O destroying mountain, says the prophet Jeremiah. This was addressed by God to Babylon. Mountain need not stand for an ordinary kingdom. It could stand for a tribe on its way to a setting up of a kingdom. Depending on the description used, it's actually used in Revelation in that sense, a force, a tribe, which was about to become a great political power. The stone became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. The stone is Christ. The mountain is the kingdom which he will set up over the whole world. So here, the word mountain is used of Christ's own kingdom, because it will literally fill the whole world. So that mountain then is a pretty good description actually of something that, if you like, fills the whole world. And of course a mountain is conspicuous in the sense it can be seen from right around, and it stands out, if you like, among the surrounding area. A hill, a mount stands for a kingdom, so a hill stands for a lesser power for a small country. A valley, this is a low-lying area. It stands for areas which have very little influence in the world. An island, islands stand for extremely remote areas. John the Baptist was the voice crying in the wilderness, saying, every valley shall be filled and every mountain and hill brought low. It makes no real sense if we think the likes of Mount Everest and so on, and snow there is suddenly going to vanish, and I mean, that would be destruction of nature.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, because there's nothing more beautiful than mountains.
Yeah.
It means John the Baptist was foretelling that the great countries and the small countries will be brought low, and that will happen in the kingdom. The big and small countries will all lose their influence, and they will all be absorbed into Christ's kingdom.
How wonderful.
The nations will exist as they are now in the kingdom, but all the leaders will be saints, not politicians.
Oh, that's fantastic.
There will be no politician left in power. Everything will be centred in Jerusalem,
Wow.
not in the capital cities of the nations. Every valley shall be filled. How will this happen? To fill a valley means to raise it up. So mountains and hills will be lowered, but valleys will be raised. What it is saying is things and people which humanity now has little time for will then be raised up to supreme importance. So tiny little countries that are scarcely heard of now would be of the same influence as the mighty powers that like America, Russia,
How beautiful.
Germany, France.
That'd be lovely.
So truth and honesty will fill the world. Mary, the mother of Jesus, said, he has put down the mighty from their seats and exalted the lowly. But of course he had done nothing of the kind at the time, because the mighty have continued to be on their seats in our day, but that's really a prophecy of the kingdom. Jesus said, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. It's important to think that he said the meek. They're the very opposite to the mighty. Could it happen that the actual mountains and hills will be made lower in the kingdom? Mountains and hills add a huge amount to the beauty of the world. Their very height is an essential part of their beauty. It is extremely unlikely that Jesus will make the mountains and hills low. No, this is not what it is being spoken of, but large and small countries, which are called mountains and hills. Now, beast, this is a very important thing in the book of Revelation. There are many beasts mentioned, so what does a beast mean? A beast is an empire. The prophet Daniel was given a vision of 4 beasts. An angel told him, these 4 great beasts are 4 kings who will rise from the earth. The 4 kings stand for 4 kingdoms. There were actually 4 empires which would span the time from Daniel's day to the second coming. The 4 are Babylon, Persia, Greece and Rome. For the most part, only one of these empires existed at any one time. This means that only one beast existed at any one time. The only exception was when 2 empires existed in Europe together. Both were part of the Roman period, and one was set up by the other. Both had intimate connections with the Roman Empire, but in fact none of them were in truth like the Roman Empire. They weren't as grand, they were really pale shadow with, but they still had trappings of the ancient Roman Empire, and that's why, as it were, they're described that's in chapter 13 of Revelation. Beasts, when several existed together, it is not empires that is meant, but lesser powers. We find that it is tribes that is meant. At one stage of Revelation, there is several beasts mentioned together, and in fact they are tribes. They were in fact the barbarian tribes like the Huns, the Goths and the Vandals,
Oh, right.
who eventually destroyed the Roman Empire. A dragon, well, we've already partly described the dragon, but let's go back with to give more evidence of the dragon's origin. We did deal with the dragon in our own day, especially regarding the Kremlin, but I think maybe we could look at more evidence as to how the dragon originated in ancient Rome. The dragon is used for different aspects of the Roman Empire. The Romans used a small statue of a dragon as an emblem. MAH00016, who was a Roman historian, wrote the dragon was covered with purple cloth and fastened to the end of a stick. Wikipedia says the Romans in the Emperor Trajan's time began to use the dragon ensign, which became the standard of the cohorts, as the eagle was the standard of the legions. Wikipedia says a cohort in the Roman army is considered to be the equivalent of a modern military battalion. Wikipedia says the Welsh Red Dragon of Wales was possibly based on the dragon standards carried by the Roman cavalry units based in Britain. So in the book of Revelation, then dragon is used in the four senses, and I think it's important to get the four senses rather than the one which we dealt with in our own day, pagan Rome, which persecuted the Christians, Christian Rome, that was the false Christian church, persecuted the true Christian church, and the false church became the beast of the sea. That was in chapter 13. And Constantine moved his capital from Rome to Byzantium in 327, and he called it after himself Constantinopolis. It became the new dragon, and it became the second Rome, and then it fell to the Turks in 1453 and then ceased to be the dragon, and Moscow is the third Rome, and it became the new dragon. So that in fact Wikipedia actually as well, it isn't just those two writers. Yes, the idea of Moscow as the third Rome was formulated in the 15th, 16th centuries in the Grand Duchy of Moscow, and Constantinople was captured on the 29th of May 1453 by Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire, and the Turkish Empire became known as the Ottoman Empire. Within decades of the fall of Constantinople, some of the Russian Orthodox Church were nominating Moscow as the third Rome, and Moscow's claim to be the third Rome may seem flimsy or even unlikely, but the dragon exists today, and it cannot be the European Union, since that is the beast that rules out most of Europe except Russia. Russia inherited its religion from Constantinople. That's important. The Russian Orthodox Church is the same practically as the Greek Orthodox Church. The Greek Orthodox religion, it is, if it is not Moscow, what else? On balance, Moscow seems to be the dragon of today. Now, I just find...
I think we have to stop there, Neil, sorry.
Have we?
Yeah.
Have we time to show the picture, one picture of the dragon?
Yes, we can
Just,
show
yeah.
a picture, sorry.
Yes, a large...
Thank you, Patrick, that's great.
A large picture of the
Yes.
the dragon which the Romans...
Definitely we can.
Because the strange thing is that they did not use a symbol of the dragon in John's day.
No.
It seems that the earliest date that they used it was 105, which was it would have been about 9 years after the writing of Revelation. But certainly we know exactly what kind of little statue they carried into battle because it has come down to us. So just a second.
Lovely. Take your time, Neil. Yeah.
Right. This is the Roman Draco.
Oh, wonderful.
Adapted by the
well,
Roman
look, we have
artist.
to see this properly. Can you, first of all, can you lift up the dragon for us to see? That's wonderful. Amazing picture.
So with
now,
the-
shall we see the writing? Yeah.
Well, adapted by the Roman army after 106. So when they went into battle, this is the kind of
That's the dragon.
the dragon that would have on the pole.
Oh my God.
Pretty ferocious
That's
looking.
very ferocious.
Ferocious looking beast. Yes, indeed, and that was the
Yeah.
dragon.
And that was the dragon. Thank you.
So that's.
Is there anything else you wanted to conclude with?
Well,
Neil?
no, I think that adds further information about the use of the dragon, or
Yeah.
how it came down, because
No, I love that picture. Thank you.
the dragon has come. It's in one of the most unusual symbols. It's
No.
come right to our own day, and it actually will go forward to the kingdom, but we will deal with that
Another time.
another time.
Lovely.